Not only is Voyager 1 the only human-made object in interstellar space, it's also astonishingly reliable, NASA has revealed. After 37 years, engineers this week tried to fire up a set of thrusters on the craft, and they worked perfectly. The spacecraft, which has been flying for 40 years, relies on small devices called thrusters to orient itself, so it can communicate with Earth. These thrusters fire in tiny pulses, or puffs, lasting mere milliseconds, to subtly rotate the spacecraft, so that its antenna points at our planet. Now, the Voyager team is able to use a set of 4 backup thrusters, dormant since 1980. With these thrusters that are still functional after 37 years without use, we will be able to extend the life of the Voyager 1 spacecraft by 2 to 3 years, said Suzanne Dodd, project manager for Voyager at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, California. Since 2014, engineers have noticed that the thrusters Voyager 1 has been using to orient the spacecraft, called attitude control thrusters, have been degrading. Over time, the thrusters require more puffs to give off the same amount of energy. At 13 billion miles from Earth, there's no mechanic shop nearby to get a tune-up.The Voyager team assembled a group of propulsion experts at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, California, to study the problem. Chris Jones, Robert Shotwell, Guernsey and Todd Barber analyzed options and predicted how the spacecraft would respond in different scenarios. They all agreed on an unusual solution: try giving the job of orientation to a set of thrusters that had been asleep for 37 years. The Voyager flight team dug up decades-old data and examined the software that was coded in an outdated assembler language to make sure we could safely test the thrusters, said Jones, chief engineer at JPL. In the early days of the mission, Voyager 1 flew by Jupiter, Saturn, and important moons of each. To accurately fly by and point the spacecraft's instruments at a smorgasbord of targets, engineers used trajectory correction maneuver, or TCM, thrusters that are identical in size and functionality to the attitude control thrusters, and are located on the backside of the spacecraft. But because Voyager 1's last planetary encounter was Saturn, the Voyager team hadn't needed to use the TCM thrusters since November 8, 1980. Back then, the TCM thrusters were used in a more continuous firing mode. They had never been used in the brief bursts necessary to orient the spacecraft. All of Voyager's thrusters were developed by Aerojet Rocketdyne.The same kind of thruster, called the MR-103, flew on other NASA spacecraft as well, such as Cassini and Dawn. On Tuesday, Voyager engineers fired up the 4 TCM thrusters for the first time in 37 years, and tested their ability to orient the spacecraft using 10-millisecond pulses. The team waited eagerly as the test results traveled through space, taking 19 hours and 35 minutes to reach an antenna in Goldstone, California, that is part of NASA's Deep Space Network. Lo and behold, on Wednesday, 0.29, they learned the TCM thrusters worked perfectly, and just as well as the attitude-controlled thrusters. The Voyager team got more excited each time with each milestone in the thruster test. The mood was one of relief, joy, and incredulity after witnessing these well-rested thrusters pick up the baton, as if no time had passed at all, said Barber, a JPL propulsion engineer. The plan going forward is to switch to the TCM thrusters in January.To make the change, Voyager has to turn on one heater per thruster, which requires power, a limited resource for the aging mission. When there is no longer enough power to operate the heaters, the team will switch back to the attitude-controlled thrusters. The thruster test went so well, the team will likely do a similar test on the TCM thrusters for Voyager 2, the twin spacecraft of Voyager 1. The attitude-controlled thrusters currently used for Voyager 2 are not yet as degraded as Voyager 1's, however. Voyager 2 is also on course to enter interstellar space, likely within the next few years. The Voyager spacecraft were built by JPL, which continues to operate both. JPL is a division of Caltech in Pasadena. The Voyager missions are part of the NASA Heliophysics System Observatory, sponsored by the Heliophysics Division of the Science Mission Directorate in Washington. For more information about the Voyager spacecraft, visit humanity's farthest and longest lived spacecraft, Voyager 1 and 2, are celebrating 40 years of operation and exploration this month. The Voyagers have set numerous records since they were launched in 1977, including Voyager 1 being the only spacecraft to have flown by all 4 outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And NASA engineers behind the probes say that they had no idea that they would still be working today. NASA launched the Voyager 1 spacecraft on September 5, 1977, and the Voyager 2 on August 20, 1977. Each spacecraft carries a golden record on board, a record that includes sounds, pictures and messages of Earth. Mr. Thomas Zervichin, Associate Administrator for NASA Science Mission Directorate said, "I believe that few missions can ever match the achievements of the Voyager spacecraft during their 4 decades of exploration." They have educated us to the unknown wonders of the universe and truly inspired humanity to continue to explore our solar system and beyond. During their 40 years of operation, the Voyagers have set several records. In 2012, Voyager 1 became the only spacecraft to have entered interstellar space, which the Voyager 2 is the only spacecraft to have flown by all 4 outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Their planetary encounters include the discovery of the first active volcanoes beyond Earth, on Jupiter's moon Io, and the most Earth-like atmosphere in the solar system, on Saturn's moon Titan. Voyager 1 is currently 13 billion miles away from Earth, traveling northward through space. The probe has recently sent back data to NASA that cosmic rays are as much as 4 times more abundant in interstellar space than in the vicinity of Earth. This suggests that the heliosphere, the region of space that contains our solar system's planets, may act as a radiation shield. Meanwhile, Voyager 2 is now 11 billion miles from Earth, traveling south towards the interstellar region. The contrasting locations of the two spacecraft allow scientists to compare two regions of space where the heliosphere interacts with the interstellar medium. Once Voyager 2 crosses into the interstellar medium, scientists will be able to sample the medium from two different locations at the same time. Mr. Ed Stone, Voyager project scientist, said, "None of us knew, when we launched 40 years ago, that anything would still be working and continuing on this pioneering journey." The most exciting thing we'll find in the next 5 years is likely to be something that we didn't know was out there to be discovered. The Voyager's power decreases by around 4 watts a year, meaning engineers having to operate the spacecraft under ever tighter power constraints. Ms. Suzanne Dodd, Voyager project manager, said, "The technology is many generations old, and it takes someone with 1970s design experience to understand how the spacecraft operate and what updates can be made to permit them to continue operating today and into the future." Unfortunately, NASA predicts that it will have to turn off the last science instrument by 2030. But even after the spacecraft goes silent, they will continue their journey, completing an orbit within the Milky Way every 225 million years. To celebrate the incredible accomplishments of the Voyager spacecraft, NASA and the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum are hosting a public event at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 17:30 BST, today. The event will take place at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, and will also be broadcast live on NASA's website. During the event, experts will discuss the Voyager's creation and mission history, their findings and imagery, impact on Earth and the key scientists and engineers who worked on the spacecraft.